Hey everyone, this is Bryan the writer coming to you from lovely picturesque Sterling, Virginia. Although I suspect some of you would argue that today, which is I'm actually recording this on the 18th, is not beautiful and or picturesque. We've got tornado watches out for our area and the weather itself just looks very unpleasant outside, but that's okay. So what's going on? Well, I just got back from a few day, not a vacation so much. I had to run down to Indiana. Those of you who followed the show for a while will remember that I am part Hoosier. I grew up in Illinois, but I spent a lot of time in Indiana. And I went down there to my parents' house. And what happened was a tree fell over and crushed my parents' house. Can you believe that? Actually crushed their house. A lot of damage. Fortunately, everybody was okay. And we could make a little light of the situation. Thankfully, their neighbors who are not in the house next door to them full time, they were able to give them a key, so they're living in the neighbor's house, and the insurance company is going to fix them up with a different location where they can live for a while. It kind of works. It's not perfect. It's not the perfect situation, but my mom gets to redo all of her floors now on the upside. I know, making light of the situation, but truly, we can make light of the situation because everybody is okay, which is honestly the most important part to me. I really don't care about anything else. So, where were we in our voyage we call all things writing? I guess let's talk about who's in the top spots this week. There has been a little bit of an upset in that regard. So number one, not surprising, Columbus, Ohio. Columbus, you're always out there. Appreciate all of my fans out in Columbus. I drove through your wonderful state just a little bit ago. They still hold my personal record for my favorite rest stops through the toll road as you're zipping across 80 there. In the number two spot is Novato, California. So thank you, Californians. I appreciate that. Here's where things get very interesting. Number three spot, Sterling, Virginia. I don't know who's listening in Sterling, Virginia. Please drop me a line. Let me know that you are listening. I appreciate you guys so much that people from my own hometown are actually listening to the show. So I'm so happy. Number four, San Jose, California, which dropped. Remember, San Jose was like in the number three spot last time. Here's another really interesting data point. Now in the fifth position of cities listening overall, the last 10 episodes, all based on the last 10 episodes, is Johns Island, South Carolina. I'm not even entirely sure where that is. As a matter of fact, I think I'm going to take a moment and look that up because that is honestly sort of the miracle of our age. You can just kind of look all that stuff up right off the bat and just see because, I love to know where you guys are. So where is Johns Island, South Carolina? It pops right up in Google. Johns Island is, for those of you who don't know, south of North Charleston. I am looking at it right now. Not far from James Island and those kinds of places. It's not a real big city. I'm so glad you guys are checking in and listening from there. The Tattooed Moose on Johns Island totally sounds like a place I need to go because it's called the Tattooed Moose. Why wouldn't I want to go? I may have to add this to my many trips that I want to make into the Carolinas. I love the Carolinas, for those of you who don't know. I am a huge fan of their, I've gone down to Savannah to see the alligator refuge, which if you've never seen the alligator refuge, it sounds a little bit scary, but go down there and check it out in South Carolina. It is oodles of fun. Okay, this is not a travel show, I promise you. I'm so excited to see Johns Island. South Carolina suddenly pop up. Thank you guys so very much. I appreciate the listens. Definitely, I do. Remember to like the show. Remember that if you want to support the show, maybe the Tattooed Moose wants to buy a sponsorship ad to go into the radio program. I would absolutely welcome such opportunities as that, because I love you all. I love you all, and I need financial support, just like anyone else. Things like my brand new Shure microphone cost money. Everything costs money. So what do I have for you on the show today? I thought it might be a little bit of fun to take a break from our regular interviews. There are more coming. Don't worry. We've got a few people lined up. It's going to be great fun. But I'm going to read you something that no one else has heard, no ears have heard till this point. I am getting ready to give out a free chapter of my new up-and-coming book called The App. Now, the reason I'm giving it away is because I want you guys to get excited about it. I want you guys to talk about the app. I want you guys to get energized about this new offering from Bryan the Writer. So, without further ado, without gilding the lily, as they say, let me get back to reading. Okay, let me set this up a little bit. It originally started as a prologue to the book, The App. One of my beta readers, a wonderful author, pointed out that it probably works better if I pull it out and make it sort of its own standalone chapter, like to give it away at shows and stuff. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to get a bunch of copies made, so that way I can hand them out to people as they pass by. Here, get a free chapter of Bryan Nowak's work. Maybe have a website at the end of it where you can go and pre-order the book itself. So anyway, without further ado, I think I said that already, didn't I? I said that already, and then I introduced more ado. I really have to learn not to. So the prologue, the chapter was originally called That Which Makes Us, and I'm going to keep that title. The darkness of central Virginia pierces through the soul of those who stand against it. Night has a way of breathing, moving, and watching in the age-old tale of predator and prey. Emissaries of the dark crawl through the night in search of blood. Truth is seldom far from fiction, and if anyone cared to peel back hundreds of years of unsolved disappearances, that truth may be stubbornly brought into the light where it would be exposed, if not any less dangerous. Sometimes understanding reality sets you free. Other times, the knowledge you seek chains you to the wall where even your screams find no purchase. Deep in the Virginian forest, Cece sat on a tree stump next to her grandmother, who stood close by. Cece would do anything for the old woman, even plunge into the depths of the darkened forest to fight off the night itself. "I'm getting tired and a little hungry," the girl admitted, the culmination of a long but rewarding day spent in the fresh air of the Virginian countryside. "I understand, Cecilia, sweetie, but let's run through this one more time." The old woman let out a deep sigh. "Remember that I'm tired too, young one. Maybe more than you can even possibly know. Once more through, and we can go inside and see about finding them cookies I hide from your ma and pa. Mostly from your pa. He'd eat them all if I'd let him." The young girl giggled at the old woman. She was Cece's favorite member of the Nindwaki family, and the woman she most idolized. Her grandmother was known by the maternal call sign Kakarsa, from her native tongue Hausa, a language common in Nigeria, where her great-grandmother grew up. The word translated to grandmother. "Now, Cece, my love, I want you to reach out with your heart and mind. Tell me what you sense. Don't use your eyes to see, but your soul. The darkness hides from our vision, but is revealed to the other senses. Can you see the woods in your mind, Cece? The trees, the leaves, organic things, and that old Studebaker out back, rusting away as the ground reclaims it? Stretch out and let it all in." Cece, a tiny but sturdy child, lapsed into a deep meditative state as Kakarsa had taught her. The long day's exhaustion had quickly replaced as she let me try that again. The long day's exhaustion was quickly replaced as she borrowed from the life forces around her. Biomass exuded its own power, which fed Cece. The plants, the water in the stream, the deer bedding down for the night, a raccoon investigating her grandmother's garbage can, and a mourning dove asleep on the roof all gave their own essence that Cece could tap into. The energy was invigorating and instructive all at the same time. The little girl dismissed the impulses of the noisy forest as she searched for the tug in her stomach she sought. Her grandmother always said something special about Cece helped her feel the targets. They produced a strange pull inside the small girl, like a line connecting her and what she sought. Yes, Kakarsa, I'm ready. Cece ran from the log with the lithe quickness and panther-like quiet which was the envy of the kids in her gym class. She reached into her small satchel and extracted a 6-inch piece of dowel, sharpened at the end. Through the inky curtain of darkness, she only sensed what was around her, rather than struggling to see objects. The blue-green images came into her mind, providing a wealth of information. She flipped the piece of wood around in her hand, testing its balance. Repeated exercises with her grandmother had honed her skill at throwing the stakes at various targets with the pinpoint accuracy of a professional knife thrower. Her grandmother suggested on more than one occasion that the child had become far more accurate with the tools than she had ever been. Cece thought this fact alone pleased her grandmother more than anything else. The mental image acted like radar, illuminating targets in front of her. The connection formed a compass arrow to follow to her objective. She could easily sense other things, too. Cece never let on that she also perceived the ropes her grandmother tied to the traps to activate them when Cece got close enough. The little girl had grown so adept at the game that even her grandmother's tug of the rope wasn't a surprise. Many times, she released her throw before her grandmother had time to completely spring the target. The first objective rushed from its hiding spot, flying out from around a large oak tree. Cece was on it before her mark had even stopped moving on its hinges. The dark made it impossible to see targets, but in her mind's eye, nothing could have been clearer. Kakarsa increased the level of difficulty to force the young girl to think before the moment of attack came. These differences challenged Cece to plan each engagement, not giving the attacker the advantage of choosing when to initiate the fight. Her grandmother once let it slip that the day would come when Kakarsa may not be around to give her the advice she needed. The thought of not having her grandmother sometimes gripped her with a deep sadness. Another object sprang from the ground a few feet in front of her. Instead of throwing the stake, she slid like a baseball player and drove the sharpened piece of hard wood into the target. Cece thought it was funny how her grandmother tried to fake her out as much as possible, but Cece always won the game, no matter how complicated. Cece swung around the trunk of a thick ash and rolled into a modified kneeling position. She struck another target from behind, shoving the wooden stake through the plywood figure. Her heart pounded in her chest. She loved the thrill of the hunt. It was the best kind of medicine for the restricted city life her parents insisted they live, an excitement her friends and her schoolmates found strange. Cece searched the darkness. There were 3 more targets close. Cece searched the darkness. There were 3 more targets cloaked in the impenetrable nightshade. Kakarsa normally only put out 3 to 5. The 6th target was different somehow. This one moved from tree to tree rapidly. Its essence was unusual, too. Unlike any exercises she had completed to date, this target gave her pause. Fear ran up her spine before she could brush it away. Cece considered the terrain, trees, bushes, mounds of earth, and headstones in the small mountainside graveyard to figure out the best approach for reclaiming the Let me try that again, Cece considered the terrain, trees, bushes, mounds of earth, and headstones in the small mountainside graveyard to figure out the best approach for the remaining targets. Kakarsa rigged up 2 targets to initiate at once, forcing her to decide which one presented the biggest threat. All along the route, the child could feel the watchful eye of the old Nigerian woman in the shadows. Cece had accused her grandmother of being a ninja in the past since she moved without a sound through the forest of trees, a skill Cece had almost mastered herself. Cece leapt towards the target before it had a chance to spring and stabbed it. She rolled into a kneeling position and launched a devastating attack on the other target just as it sprang from the ground. The little girl somersaulted off the target and jumped back to her feet. The sixth target approached from the shadows. The tug drawing her to it went taut like a knot pulled progressively tighter. This target was not of wood, cloth, and the special oil her grandmother put on them, but more solid. If she didn't know any better, this one was human, yet inhuman at the same time. A sensation grew much stronger than anything else her grandmother had thrown in front of her, like a needle inside of her pointing laser-like no matter which way she turned. Even if she could change directions, she knew she couldn't possibly walk away. Night was all-consuming, and the trail in front of Cece even more so. Whatever lay on the trail ahead formed an impenetrable darkness. Intuition told Cece the target stepped right in front of her. Even if she couldn't see it with her eyes, a cold wind blew down off the trail, forcing a shiver from Cece as a being coalesced out of the abyss. The thing's simmering blue eyes shimmered in the darkness. Taller than a normal man, it would have easily towered over her father. Whatever this creature was had gray skin and matted down black hair on its head. A long cape billowed out around it and then disappeared as if it was made of blackened fog rolling up from the ground. Cece had once watched an animal die. This creature reminded her of the moment the animal succumbed to death, except hundreds of times more intense. She psychically pushed back against the creature, and when their two essences met, she felt the pain, torture, hatred, and death which made up its existence. This creature, which was once human, did not receive these things, but dealt them. It thirsted for blood, and it wasn't too picky where the blood came from. This was horror incarnate. Cece broke their psychic connection, and acting upon instinct, she launched a wooden stake as hard as her arm could throw. However, she lacked the strength necessary to do any real damage, and the wooden stake bounced off the creature to fall on the forest floor. It looked up at Cece and smiled, a cold grin which told her she was suddenly in mortal danger. She wanted to flee, however her feet refused to move. Whatever this thing was had a hold on her in a way nothing else could. Her body shut down and became a block of ice and equally as heavy. Whatever this was would be on her in moments if she didn't break the spell. Her grandmother swept Cece up with one arm and pulled her in close. With the other arm, Kakarsa released a wooden stake with such ferocity it stunned the young girl. The target let out a screech and then vanished into a cloud of dust, which settled on the forest floor. It didn't seem real. She thought there was a living, breathing, human being standing in front of her for a moment. While her instincts told her that whatever it was couldn't be real, or couldn't be a real person, she couldn't shake the image of the thing dissolving into a cloud of dust. Then there was the issue of Kakarsa. Had Cece really watched her own grandmother kill? Was the woman she most idolized capable of committing murder? A mixture of confusion and fear gripped her. The old woman took a knee, so she was staring directly into Cece's eyes. "Child, my dear one, get yourself to the house, lock the doors, and don't let nobody in except me. You keep your stakes close. I'll be around presently." Cece began to argue, but the protestations would have fallen upon deaf ears. Kakarsa had already vanished into the dark of the woods, and as silently as she had materialized behind young Cece. There was fear in the old woman's eyes, fear like Cece had never seen before. She turned and ran. Paths in the forest crisscrossed in front of her, but she knew them by heart. The air flowing into and out of her lungs burned in a pulse that kept time with the steady pounding of her heart. The dim lights of the kitchen windows soon poked out from the leaves to show Cece the final few steps toward the cabin. She plunged through the door, opening it and sweeping it closed again in one quick motion. Repeating the action with the door of her bedroom, Cece locked it behind her. Kakarsa's home had always been a place of comfort and safety, but now, unexplainably, she knew they all faced a danger beyond anything she could comprehend. 3 hours later, Cece sat in her designated bedroom and strained to hear what the adults were talking about in the other room, while she rearranged her homemade dolls into different positions, faking a tea party to pass the time. Her father always exhibited some of Kakarsa's more impressive strengths. However, he seldom exercised those gifts. That night, he and Kakarsa put up a revolving field around Cece's room to prevent the girl from hearing what was being said. Cece explored the psychic energy for some sort of crack. The energy gave in places, like a thick balloon which could be pushed in but refused to burst. No sooner had Cece stretched out her feelings to listen to her father and Kakarsa did she get shoved back. The psychic wall proved difficult, but not impenetrable. Snippets of conversation made it through, most of them centering around looking for answers and trying to find another way. Along with bits of discussion, Cece recognized a gripping fear. Something had scared the adults in her life, and Kakarsa was not afraid of anything. Cece awoke to the sounds of scraping across the cabin's hardwood floor. She looked out of the bedroom window and saw her father loading a large trunk into the back of their pickup truck. In the house, with the psychic walls now dissipated, Cece felt out for her grandmother's essence. Her soul told of a woman who knew what had to be done and was willing to do it, even if there was a sense of deep sadness in her heart. Cece dozed off again for a few hours, only to be awoken by Kakarsa. "Cece, my love, you have to go home with your father. I'm sorry, but I need to help your daddy. Do you understand me?" "Kakarsa, I want to stay with you." Cece read the fear and regret in her grandmother's eyes. She would remember this moment for the rest of her life. "I know, love, and there's no place I would rather be. Something has come up, and I'm afraid it may not be safe for you here in the woods. You go on home, okay?" The small child grabbed up 3 of her dolls. "But then it isn't safe for you." "Oh, sweetie, come now. Kakarsa may be old, but she sure enough can take care of herself. There ain't nothing in these woods stronger or smarter than me. I can promise you that." A small tear rolled down her grandmother's cheek. "Cece, remember that no matter what happens in this life, I will always be watching you. Call on me whenever you need me, and I'll drop whatever I'm doing and be there. You're always my little warrior, and I'm so proud of you." The pained expression on Kakarsa's face impressed upon Cece the gravity of the situation she did not fully understand. "I'm scared." "Child, it's all right. Fear makes you watchful, and watchfulness makes you prepare for what will come. That's your body's way of keeping you safe. Everything will be okay. I can promise you that. Now, go on and get yourself ready. I'll be in the kitchen with your daddy." With tears in her eyes, Cece packed her few things into an overnight bag that read "Going to Grandma's house," and walked out into the kitchen. Kakarsa busied herself by filling a bucket full of garlic and cutting additional steaks, longer and sharper than the ones Cece practiced with. Cece knew something was wrong, and yet strengthened her resolve to be brave in the face of this unseen danger. Whatever that thing outside had been, she was far too small to contribute to the solution. Her father and grandmother exchanged a longer hug than normal. Cece and her father climbed into the truck and drove back to the city. It was the last time she would lay eyes on her grandmother. That was the first chapter / prologue / free chapter I'm giving away for my upcoming book, The App, which is slowly but surely getting done. I've got a few more things I have to do. So I'm really excited to be able to actually give you guys this little bit of insight. So I'm pleased you could join me this week on All Things Writing. Again, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoy the content every week, remember, hit that like button so you can know when new shows come out. Consider a financial donation. Every little tiny bit helps. That loose pocket change, whatever it may be, really is useful. You can hit the donate link if you are looking at me or watching me through something that has the donate button available. You can PayPal me as well. You can also go to buymeacoffee.com and you can find me there. So thank you very much for joining me, and I hope you have a wonderful next week. Remember, next week is a bye week, so I will not be making a show next week, but I hope to have some more wonderful guests coming up soon enough. I'm reading a book right now, which I don't have sitting here, which I should. The book is wonderful, and it's serial killery, and I love serial killers in all their forms. Fictional ones, not real ones, by the way. I don't want anybody calling the police on me. So. All right, well, you guys have a wonderful week, and this is Bryan the Writer, Bryan Noack, for All Things Writing, signing off.